day it has been for those who want India to develop capabilities that will deter any aggression. A destroyer, a frigate, and a submarine were commissioned together for the first time in the presence of the Prime Minister, who said India is becoming a major military power and is being recognized as a reliable and responsible partner in the world. The INS Surat, viewers, fourth and final vessel of Project 15B stealth destroyer class, fastest indigenous destroyer delivered just 31 months after launch, completed sea trials and machinery trials in a record 6 months, armed with surface-to-air missiles, anti-ship missiles and torpedoes. First AI-enabled warship with indigenously developed AI solutions, 75% indigenous with contributions from firms like L&T, BHEL and Mahindra. INS Nilgiri, the lead ship of Project 70A stealth frigate class. Supersonic cruise missile system, 76mm upgraded gun and rapid-fire weapons, advanced stealth technology and reduced radar signatures, operates multiple helicopter types including newly inducted MH-60R, 75% indigenous with work from 200 indigenous firms including MSMEs. INS Vakshir, sixth and final submarine under Scorpion class Project 75, built in collaboration with the naval group of France, built for anti-surface and anti-submarine warfare, mine laying and intelligence gathering, advanced acoustic absorption, technology for stealth operations. I mean, there are many viewers, impressive features about these three battleships. It is also a day when India has successfully tested its first domestically developed micro-missile system, engineered to counter swarm drone threats. The Economic Explosives Limited successfully tests the Bhargava Vastra, indigenous counter-drone system with guided micro-missiles, viewers, that can detect drones 10 kilometers, large ones and small ones at 6 kilometers. System functions across varied terrain up to 5,000 meter altitude. This will enable us to develop an Iron Dome, viewers, just like Israel has. More than this, Indonesia is eyeing the import of the BrahMos missile system as part of a $450 million deal with India. Indonesia eyes the BrahMos missiles in $450 million deal with India. Why, viewers? Because it has huge features, a range of 300 kilometers, launched from land, air or sea. It flies at Mach 3, fastest in the world in its category. It's developed here. Philippines has already, viewers, imported the BrahMos from India. Let's put these developments in perspective and let's open this conversation up. And I want to begin first with Commodore Saab, who is here with us, and he's a founder, Commodore AJ Singh. If you can hear me, can you explain the significance of developing these warships and submarines, and how much of an impact will such naval vessels have in the Indo-Pacific region? What are the advantages?
Thank you for having me on your show. Today is indeed a red letter day for the Indian Navy. I mean, this is unprecedented. 3 major war vessels getting commissioned on the same day speaks volumes for the national shipbuilding ecosystem. You know, the Navy's always been in the forefront of indigenization, right from 1972 when INS Nilgiri was built in Mazagon docks. We've now reached a stage where almost 60 ships are presently, 60 ships and submarines are currently under construction in various Indian shipyards. Other than 2, all of them are being built in India. So that in itself is a great, it's a great testament to India's industrial skills, our technological prowess, our Navy's encouragement to indigenization, the operational capability of the Navy, and of course, the national sort of effort to put this all together. Now, if you look at these 3 ships, INS Surat, the last, as you mentioned, the 4th of the 4 Project 15 Bravo destroyers, is a 7,500 ton warship, a destroyer. It's got stealth features. It is perhaps the most powerful warship in the operating in the Indian Ocean today, by far. No other navy in the Indian Ocean region has a destroyer of this caliber, and there are very few perhaps in the world, even with the more powerful navies. INS Nilgiri, a stealth frigate, first of the Project 17 Alpha. 7 of these are being built. stealth technologies are critical today to maritime operations because the surface of the sea has become so transparent due to, very advanced surveillance technologies, satellites, long-range maritime patrol aircraft, unmanned aerial vehicles, unmanned underwater vehicles, submarines, synthetic aperture radars, you name it, and there's a technology available to detect uh, warships at sea. So obviously, large surface forces can no longer operate without being detected. They will be detected. But the issue is, the more stealth you have on your platforms, on your hulls are
Right.
designed, the more stealth features that they're designed with, the more difficult they are to detect. Particularly when you're going in for an attack or the enemy is around. The difference between winning and losing is who detects whom first and is able to carry out the attack. Now, if you have good stealth technologies, you have a tremendous advantage over your enemy because you will detect his ships much before he will detect yours. So you have a range advantage and you can deliver your weapons much before he's even detected that you're there. So that is why stealth is so important. Now, stealth technologies are being introduced by most major navies in the world. But this is a technology that nobody is going to share with anybody else because it's a very niche technology.
Right.
So Surat's stealth technologies are all indigenously developed. And I think that's a great, great capability that India has now of developing stealth destroyers, stealth frigates, stealth corvettes. So stealth is now the key word. Now coming to the third thing, the submarine, Warships. Warships is one of the most modern submarines in the conventional submarines in the region. It's a Scorpion class. The Scorpion is a early 20th century design. It's being built indigenously. That's the important thing here because submarine construction is a very complex thing. Mazagon Docks has built 6 of them, and we are now an established submarine building nation. And to put all these together and commission them on the same day, I think is a great, great achievement. A few years ago, Xi Jinping had commissioned 3 major warships in the PLA Navy. And that had made waves all over the world. Look at the Chinese Navy, 3 ships being commissioned on the same day. And here we've done it, barely a few years later.
Okay.
So I think it's a great, great achievement for everybody. And definitely your second part, it gives us tremendous capability in the Indian Ocean and in fact in the Indo-Pacific. Because now suddenly you have this, now not suddenly, but you have a great, naval power projection capability. So all these are blue water platforms. And if India has to be a big power, it has to have a big navy. It has to have a powerful navy. It has to have the ability to project power wherever India's interests are affected anywhere in the world.
Okay.
And that's what a blue water navy does.
So this is great news all around. General Bakshi, what has led to asymmetry between India and China that were roughly at par with each other in GDP terms in the late 40s after independence? Suddenly we saw this disparity. In fact, I'm just looking at some numbers, General Saab, and I'm looking at naval strength comparison. India fleet strength is 293, China is 754. Aircraft carriers 2 and 3, so we've got a bit of parity there. Helicopter carriers 0 and 4, destroyers 1350, frigates 1447, corvettes 1872, and so on and so forth. Submarines 1861, and so on and so forth. So how did this happen, this disparity?
This disparity happened because China has about a 10 years plus head start over us. Deng Xiaoping had said that he wanted to achieve economic modernization first, and having completed those, he would, launch on full-scale military modernization. And for that period, he said we would hide our capabilities, bide our time. We found the gap. We were almost on par in our defense budget in the 80s. And then the Chinese defense budget has been going up and up. Today, China has the largest navy in the world, let's face it, larger than the United States Navy. Though that counts for a lot of the smaller ships, in terms of capital ships, the US Navy is still well ahead. But the fact is that today, China is the largest navy. But I'm very happy to state, and I must state so unequivocally, out of the 3 services, it is the Indian Navy that from the very outset has gone gung-ho on indigenization. Today we are not buying a navy, we are building a navy, right? And as the Commodore very rightly pointed out, 60 ships and submarines are under construction in India. The bulk of our fleet is being produced in India, and that including stealth stealth destroyers, you know, of the 14 Bravo class, I mean, they are a world apart. I mean, they can stand, they can give a run for their money to any American ship of equivalent tonnage, right? So the Indian Navy has been one of the foremost in this particular field. Yet we have a distance to cover. The simple fact is autarky in weapons systems is the sine qua non for a major power. You can't call yourself a major power as long as you are importing 60 to 70% of your high-tech equipment. Thank God that is now being pared down very rapidly. We are not only building our own equipment, we are exporting. As you rightly pointed out, the Philippines has purchased the BrahMos missiles. Indonesia wants to purchase them. Armenia has bought our Akash surface-to-air missiles. They bought our Pinaka multi-barrel rocket systems, and they want to buy a hell of a lot more. So, the rest of the world is now waking up and trying to take a look at the progress strides India has made.
So let me bring in Sushant Sareen.
The only place where we are...
Let me just bring in Sushant Sareen. How far down the road are we towards creating indigenous capacities that will lead significantly to our reliance, reduction of our reliance on importing top-end weapon systems? That's to take off from General Bakshi, actually.
I think we still have a long distance to go, Rahul. Let's face it. We have lagged behind. A lot of our focus has been on, as General Bakshi says, buying an air force or buying a navy and stuff like that. Although in recent years we've started building our own stuff. So I think we still have a long way to go. So for example, look at the Tejas aircraft. It's a competent aircraft, but just look at the number of years it has taken to develop that aircraft. And even now we are dependent on the Americans for the engines because building a jet engine is a very, very complex thing. So we have serious problems. Now, where the Chinese have outscored us over us is the way they have developed their manufacturing capability and the ability their ability to absorb those technologies, reverse engineer them and then present them as their own. And they've left a whole lot of countries far behind. Even on basic things, Rahul, just I think the last couple of days we've been reading in the newspapers how the Chinese are now trying to strangulate the Indian economy by holding back on capital goods exports to India, right? Machine exports to India. So let's not get ahead of ourselves. I think what has happened today, as the Commodore Saab is saying, is a great achievement. I think it's a signal achievement what has happened today. But let us not pretend that we are over the hill. We have a very, very long way to go, number one. Number two, General Bakshi is also right. Out of all the three services, the Indian Navy has been probably, and I don't want to be pilloried by all the ex-servicemen, they have happened to bring it with me, but the Indian Navy has been probably the most professional in terms of procurement, in terms of absorbing technologies, in terms of identifying what it needs. The other two forces have lagged behind. There could be reasons for that. The size of the army is much bigger than that Navy. The kind of stuff which the Air Force requires is very different from what the Navy requires. But that does not take away from the professionalism of the Indian Navy in coming up with what it wants. And I think they have managed to build certain indigenous capabilities which perhaps have not been there with the other forces. And just one last thing. The Air Chief has been talking about the need to induct the aircraft in the Indian Air Force, right? Especially the indigenous aircraft, the Tejas aircraft. And I think his complaint has to be taken very seriously that while the Air Force is ready to take those aircraft are not being supplied. Even the numbers that have been ordered are not being supplied. Now, if we want to go to the international market and we are trying to sell these aircraft internationally, if we can't supply our own people with these aircraft, then how are we going to supply? And just allow me one last sentence. The other thing is most of our war doctrines have been that we'll have short swift wars, 15-day, 20-day wars. But we have seen the wars which are being fought right now. One war which we are seeing, in fact, there's two major wars. One has been going on for almost 3 years now.
Yeah.
One for another almost 2 years now, a year and a half.
Yeah.
You need quantity to be able to pursue those wars.
Okay.
The Israelis can get it from the Americans and other countries can get it from other people. Where will we get our stuff from?
Okay.
So we need to build up.
Let me quickly bring in Dr. Ranganathan. Don't have much time, Dr. Ranganathan. I know you're civilian amongst the experts, so to speak. But I want to ask you, as a civilian, your point of view on a very specific question, and that is that many civilians say that, oh, so much of our money is being diverted towards militarization. I wish that could be cut down so that we could have, money for welfare schemes, etc., etc. How do you react to that?
First of all, I speak as a layman, as you correctly said, and I've been made to realize that I am a layman amongst luminaries, because I think, as far as I'm concerned, the discussion already got over when General Bakshi uttered that magical phrase, absolutely magical, saying that, we are not buying Indian Navy, we're building it. Absolutely. Thank you very much. That's a memorable one to say. I didn't want to make this issue political. Yeah. But I'm afraid this has been served on a platter for us, because all through the day, you've seen the rants from the Congress. Look, defense, science, space programs span decades and across governments, and every government should be credited. Like for Tejas, Vikrant, Chandrayaan, Arjun, Mangalyaan, vaccine research. The problem comes when the Congress takes it to extremes, and this is what is needless. Every time India under Modi accomplishes something in science, technology, defense, space, they start crediting Nehru for it. Nehru built this, Nehru built that, INS Vikrant, Chandrayaan, आज भी शुरू हो गए. It is because of Nehru. अगर तुम सांस भी ले रहे हो तो भी नेहरू जी की देन है. I'm sorry, but it is absurd to credit Nehru for everything. Might as well credit Hitler for the 1969 moon landing. For it wouldn't have been possible without von Braun and V2 technology that the Americans snatched as war spoils. Ideas need to be backed by contemporary, not historical figures. There is no such thing as historical enabling in science and technology. Great research institutes and centers of excellence can crumble within years, even months. Ideas are a product of a human mind, not sanctioned buildings. Right. Science and engineering doesn't live in the past. And lastly, I want to say this. If from importing 70% of defense equipment in the 1990s, Rahul, we are at a stage where 70% of defense equipment is being indigenously procured. And this has to do with the vision and foresight of Dr. Kalam and his so-called self-reliant index, if you remember. Not any politician.
Well, and memorable phrase from General Bakshi gave me the goose flesh, actually. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for this enlightening conversation. I just want to move on, viewers, because we are going